Welcome to the Memory Scope channel. Be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss out more videos like this one. Mongolia 2003. 5-year-old Buted Maya laughs while hugging her camel, and the desert photographer Han Cheng-li captured this heartwarming moment of connection between a child and animal, showcasing the enduring bond found in nomadic culture. Burlington, 1981, newly elected Mayor Bernie Sanders picks up trash in a public park on his own. This act of humility, following his first electoral victory, signaled a hands-on approach to leadership for the city. Algeria, 1958, during the war, a French Foreign Legion soldier carries a starving donkey to safety. The unit adopted the rescued animal as their mascot, naming him Bambi and keeping him safe from the conflict. Newcastle, 1972, before he became a global comedy icon, 17-year-old Rowan Atkinson studies electrical engineering at university. This serious student would soon trade his textbooks for the stage, eventually creating the legendary character Mr. Bean. France, 1995, Madame Jeanne Calment smiles, holding the record as the oldest verifiable person to ever live. She survived for 122 years, witnessing history evolve from Vincent van Gogh to the digital age. Appalachia, pre-1900s, billions of ancient American chestnut trees, once called the Lords of the Forest, dominate the landscape. A fungal blight would later wipe them out, changing this ecosystem and the local economy forever. Korea, 1904. A sailor wearing cool hemp clothes takes a break from transporting cargo under his sail shadow. He smokes a long bamboo pipe, enjoying a quiet moment of rest before resuming his hard journey. Chiapas, 1991. Photographer Antonio Turok captures a stunning image of a total solar eclipse over Mexico. The celestial event plunged the region into darkness, creating a surreal and unforgettable atmosphere for those watching from below. Northern Ireland, 1960, a young Liam Neeson stands outside his family home in Ballymena with his 3 sisters long before Hollywood fame. He was just a boy, posing for a simple family photograph in the garden. Frankfurt, 1946, a German soldier returns from the war, only to find his home in ruins and family gone. He collapses in anguish, overwhelmed by the devastating reality that awaited him after the fighting ceased. France, 2005, Peggy Seal Harris finally learns the fate of her husband, whose plane was shot down in 1944. For 60 years, the town of Levantus had secretly memorialized his sacrifice without her knowledge. Afghanistan, 1980, a Soviet Mi-8 helicopter flies past the giant Bamiyan Buddha statues carved into the cliff decades later. These ancient monuments would be tragically destroyed, making this image a rare historical record of the site. New York, 1933, Central Park is transformed into a shanty town known as a Hooverville. During the Great Depression, homeless citizens built makeshift shacks in the shadow of skyscrapers, struggling to survive the economic collapse. Berlin, 1939, a massive military demonstration marks Hitler's 50th birthday. Just months before the war begins, thousands of troops march in precision, displaying the terrifying power of the regime that would soon engulf Europe in conflict. Egypt, 1864, a group of Japanese samurai pose in front of the Sphinx during a diplomatic mission. This rare photograph captures a surreal cultural crossover as traditional warriors stand before ancient desert monuments in full armor. Paris, 1957, a 21-year-old Yves Saint Laurent stands alone at the funeral of Christian Dior. The young designer looks somber, unaware that he is about to take over the fashion house and become a legend. Cincinnati, 1874. A man browses for books in the magnificent old public library featuring cast iron alcoves. This architectural gem was tragically demolished, later leaving only photographs to remember its 5 levels of literary history. Korea, 1950. An American infantryman comforts his grief-stricken buddy whose friend was killed in action. The raw emotion captures the brotherhood formed in combat, where soldiers became the only support system for one another. Indiana 1911 Jacob Miller, a Civil War veteran, shows the bullet wound in his forehead. He survived decades earlier. He lived with an open wound for years, a permanent reminder of the brutal conflict. California 1970s Pacific Southwest Airlines. Stewardesses pose in their colorful miniskirt uniforms. The airline was famous for its casual atmosphere and bright aesthetic, reflecting the liberated and vibrant fashion trends of the decade on the West Coast. USA 1953 United Airlines launches a men-only executive flight featuring cigars and steak dinners. This exclusive service reflected the gender norms of the era, catering specifically to businessmen traveling between major cities for their work. Washington 1941 Winston Churchill meets with journalists at the White House. Wearing his wartime siren suit, the British Prime Minister visited to coordinate strategy with the United States shortly after America entered the global war. Italy 1944 Mount Vesuvius erupts violently while Allied bombers fly nearby during World War II. The volcano spewed ash and lava, destroying villages and complicating military operations in the middle of the Italian campaign. France 1916. The haunted eyes of a British soldier stare from a trench during the Battle of the Somme. This image captures the psychological toll of trench warfare known as the 1,000-yard stare. Warsaw 2021. A comparison shows the old town in ruins after the war and its complete restoration. Today, the city was painstakingly rebuilt using original bricks rising from the ashes to reclaim its history. Kabul 1962. Two female medicine students listen to their professor examine a plaster cast at the university. This photo reveals a time when Afghan women pursued higher education freely before political changes altered society. Washington 1983. President Ronald Reagan meets with Afghan Mujahideen fighters in the Oval Office. At the time, they were allies against the Soviets, but history would later complicate the relationship between these two political groups. New York, 1945. A B-25 bomber crashes into the Empire State Building in thick fog, leaving a massive hole. Firefighters work high above the city streets to extinguish the flames in a dramatic rescue operation. Moscow 1930s Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin employs a team of retouchers to remove executed political enemies from photos. These altered images rewrote history, erasing former allies as if they had never existed at all. France 1950. A Frenchman takes his first sip of Coca-Cola and his skeptical expression suggests it was not love at first taste. This moment captures the initial cultural clash as American products entered Europe. Las Vegas 1950. A dancer poses as Miss Atomic Bomb, wearing a mushroom cloud swimsuit. The pageant celebrated the nuclear testing happening nearby in the desert, reflecting the strange atomic craze of the era. Turkmenistan 1971. Soviet engineers set fire to a gas crater, hoping it would burn out in days. 50 years later, the site known as the Door to Hell is still burning in the desert. New Jersey 1968. A business displays a humorous sign distracting drivers with a trend of short skirts. The Carnaby Street fashion influence had reached America, bringing higher hemlines and causing traffic accidents along the way. New York 1929. Crowds gather on Wall Street during the stock market crash known as Black Tuesday. Panic filled the air as fortunes vanished overnight, marking the beginning of the Great Depression that devastated the economy. Boston 1927. A car sits mangled on the street after a serious accident in the city. Without modern safety features like seat belts or airbags, early automobile crashes were often far more dangerous for passengers. Russia present day. The cockpit of an abandoned Soviet jet sits rusting in a field. The complex dials and gauges remain frozen in time, a ghostly reminder of Cold War military aviation and technology. Japan 1890. A squad of samurai warriors poses in full armor for a studio photograph. This era marked the end of their class as Japan modernized rapidly and moved away from feudal military traditions. England, 1945. Gunner Hector Murdoch returns home on his birthday. After 4 years as a prisoner, his wife and son greet him with joy, having not known if he was dead or alive during captivity. Turkey, present day, the ancient Hellenistic theater in Laodicea, stands revealed after recent excavations built 2,200 years ago. This magnificent structure once hosted thousands of spectators, showcasing the enduring legacy of Greek architecture and culture. Sumer 3000 BC, a clay tablet displays a detailed house plan drawn by a Sumerian architect created 5,000 years ago. This artifact shows that the desire to design and organize our living spaces is timeless. Rome, 1515, Michelangelo's marble sculpture of Moses features a tiny contracted muscle in the forearm. This anatomical detail appears only when the pinky is lifted, proving the artist's incredible understanding of the human body. New York, 1929, sunlight streams through the windows of Grand Central Terminal in a way no longer possible today. Surrounding skyscrapers now block the eye light, making this atmospheric photo a memory of the city's past skyline. New York, 1925. An immigrant family stands on the dock at Ellis Island, looking toward the city skyline. After passing rigid medical exams, they await the ferry that will finally take them to their new life. London, 1958. A young David Attenborough introduces Prince Charles and Princess Anne to a cockatoo. The naturalist was already sharing his passion for wildlife with the royal family long before becoming a global icon. Oregon, 1903. A gold prospector walks a dusty trail with a burro carrying his supplies. He heads into the wilderness of Grants Pass, hoping to strike it rich during the tail end of the rush. West Virginia, 1921. Students and a teacher pose outside the humble Sunset School in Pocahontas County. This one-room schoolhouse represents the rural education system that served mountain communities in the early 20th century. New York, 1972. The Twin Towers of the World Trade Center near completion, dramatically altering the city skyline. Just a year before opening, these massive structures were already becoming a defining symbol of Manhattan. USA, 1960s. A baby sleeps in a bassinet attached to the luggage rack on a commercial flight. Air travel was once spacious enough to accommodate these hanging cots, a luxury that has since disappeared. France, 1900. Knife grinders work lying on their stomachs to save their backs from strain. Their dogs sit on their legs to provide warmth, creating a unique and practical partnership in this difficult trade. Spain, 1968. The legendary cast of Once Upon a Time in the West relaxes on set. Henry Fonda and Charles Bronson stand with director Sergio Leone, creating a masterpiece that redefined the spaghetti western genre. San Francisco, 1896. The ornate cliff house stands perched on the rocks overlooking the Pacific Ocean. This Victorian architectural marvel was a popular destination before it was eventually destroyed by fire like its predecessors. California, 1928. Huntington Beach is covered in oil derricks during a massive drilling boom. The beach, now known for surfing, was once an industrial forest of towers extracting black gold from the ground. London, 1925. Passengers watch the first in-flight film on an Imperial Airways flight. This early entertainment experiment marked the beginning of cinema in the sky, long before seat-back screens became a standard feature. Egypt, 200. At a portrait shows a mother with her children in Roman Alexandria. Nearly 2,000 years ago, the vivid details preserve their faces, offering a hauntingly realistic glimpse into ancient family life. Tunisia, 230. At the massive Roman amphitheater of El Jem rises from the landscape, one of the best preserved structures of its kind. It once held 35,000 spectators for gladiator games and chariot races. New York, 1890. Thousands of telephone and telegraph cables darkened the sky above the city streets before lines were moved underground. This chaotic web of wires connected the growing metropolis but blocked out the sun. Europe, 1945, massive piles of Mauser rifles sit surrendered by German soldiers. At the end of the war, these mountains of discarded weapons symbolize the disarming of a regime and the cessation of hostilities. Peru 500 and the spiral Cantalloc aqueducts built by the Nazca culture still function in the desert today. These ancient hydraulic engineering marvels allow water to flow underground, sustaining life in an arid environment. Finland, 1908. The daughters of Tsar Nicholas II pose during a summer cruise. These smiling Grand Duchesses enjoy a moment of peace, unaware of the tragic fate that awaits their family a decade later. New York, 1904. The Longacre Square is renamed Times Square as the newspaper moves its headquarters. There, horse-drawn carriages and early electric streetcars share the road in this early view of the world's most famous intersection. Italy, 1917. Austro-Hungarian soldiers pose with homemade trench maces on a mountain peak. These brutal medieval-style weapons were crafted for close quarters, combat highlighting the savage nature of fighting on the Italian front. Egypt, 1390 BC, a painter's palette from the era of Amenhotep III still holds traces of pigment. This 3,000-year-old tool connects us to an ancient artist who once colored the temples of the pharaohs. Venice, 1945. American troops walked through the historic streets. At the end of the war, a comparison with today shows the architecture remains unchanged, while the soldiers have been replaced by crowds of tourists. Korea, 1953. A mother embraces her son who escaped a North Korean prisoner camp. The emotional reunion took place shortly after the armistice was signed, ending the fighting and bringing families back together after separation. Italy, present day, the abandoned estate of Napoleon Bonaparte's youngest sister sits decaying in the countryside, once a home of imperial luxury. The 400-year-old villa is now reclaimed by nature, its grandeur fading into history. Washington, 1899. Lumberjacks pose with giant axes inside the cut of a massive tree. These men worked manually to fell the ancient giants of the Pacific Northwest, fueling the building boom of the century. Peru 1400s and Incan wall in Cuzco showcases master stonemasonry with perfectly fitted rocks. The stones are cut so precisely that not even a piece of paper can fit between them, surviving centuries of earthquakes. New York, 1940s. Police officers smash pinball machines with sledgehammers during the prohibition of the game. Authorities considered pinball a form of gambling, banning it in major cities for decades until it was finally legalized. Iran, 1970s. An Iran air flight attendant poses in her uniform before the revolution. This image captures the westernized lifestyle and fashion that existed in the country before religious laws transformed society in 1979. USA 1970s girls skate down the street wearing high socks and shorts. Roller skating was a massive cultural trend during the decade, representing the carefree and active youth culture of the disco era. London, 1902. Famous writer Jack London captures a photo of two young boys on the street. He spent time living in the poor East End district to document the harsh realities of urban poverty. London, 1900. A shoe salesman stands in the smallest shop in the city, measuring just over 1 square meter. Despite the cramped space, he manages to conduct business in this tiny alcove on the street. France, 1944. A French woman pours cider for a British gunner in the town of Lisieux. This moment of hospitality amidst the ruins highlights the relief and gratitude of civilians as Allied forces liberated them. USA, 1926. The original Michelin Man mascot walks the streets to promote tires. Unlike the cute modern version, this early costume made of bicycle tires looks slightly terrifying to the people passing by. New York, 1972. Talk show host Dick Cavett interviews actress Raquel Welch. The segment became famous not just for the conversation, but for Welch's outfit, which captured the bold and glamorous fashion style of the era. Washington, 1963. A young Bill Clinton shakes hands with President John F. Kennedy in the Rose Garden. This brief meeting inspired the teenager to pursue a life in politics, eventually leading him to the presidency. Pennsylvania, 1910. A couple poses affectionately on a fence in Harrisburg. Their candid body language and genuine smiles offer a rare, relaxed glimpse into romance a century ago, breaking the mold of stiff portraits. Florence, 2020. A man sits in the exact spot his grandfather did during World War II. The side-by-side comparison connects two generations across, time showing the enduring nature of the city despite the passing years. New Delhi, 1948. A massive crowd gathers for the funeral of Mahatma Gandhi. Determined onlookers climb up utility poles just to get a glimpse of the procession, showing the immense impact the leader had on India. New York, 1963. Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, reads a newspaper with his feet up. The young boxer exudes confidence and charisma just before his rise to becoming the heavyweight champion of boxing. Japan, present-day rows of radioactive cars sit abandoned near the Fukushima nuclear plant, slowly being swallowed by vegetation. Nature is reclaiming the vehicles that were left behind during the frantic evacuation after the disaster. California, 1889. Lumberjacks prepare to fell a giant tree using only hand-powered saws. The sheer scale of the tree compared to the men highlights the incredible physical labor required before the invention of modern chainsaws. USA, 1977. Elvis Presley performs on stage during the final year of his life. Despite his fame, he was struggling with a massive prescription drug addiction, taking thousands of doses prescribed by his doctor that year. Los Angeles, 1969. A student at Beverly Hills High School wears a fringed dress. She made herself. Her unique style reflects the counterculture fashion trends of the late 60s, where self-expression was everything to youth. So, 1952. A woman proudly displays her high-fidelity tube record player. This technology was the cutting edge of home audio at the time, allowing music lovers to experience better sound quality in their living rooms. California, present day. An abandoned train track bridge curves through the DOS landscape leading to nowhere. The rusting steel structure stands as a silent monument to a time when rail travel was the lifeline of the state. Michigan, 1934. Future President Gerald Ford stands with teammate Willis Ward. Ford threatened to quit the football team when Ward was benched due to segregation, showing his character and loyalty long before his political career. Jordan, 1917. T.E. Lawrence, known as Lawrence of Arabia, poses with a camel and rifle. The British officer played a key role in the Arab revolt against the Ottoman Empire, becoming a legendary historical figure. London, 2020. A grandson recreates a photo taken by his grandfather in Hyde Park during World War II. The peaceful modern setting contrasts with the wartime era, bridging the gap between two different generations. Scotland, 1540. The world's oldest football sits on display, found behind paneling in Stirling Castle, made of leather and pig bladder. This artifact proves the sport has been played for nearly 500 years. Portugal, 1900. Women from the Azores Islands wear their traditional hooded capes known as capote e capello. The distinctive blue garments completely cover their figures, a unique regional fashion that has since vanished from use. Mongolia, 1956. A strong man lifts heavy weights in front of a captivated audience on the steppe. This display of physical power is a traditional form of entertainment, celebrating strength and endurance in the local culture. France, 1550. The intricate lion armor gauntlet of King Henry II is a masterpiece of metalwork designed for parade rather than battle. The detailed craftsmanship displays the wealth and power of the French monarchy. New Zealand, 2001. Elijah Wood stands next to his scaled double Kiran Shah on the set of Lord of the Rings. They coordinate poses to create the illusion of height difference between hobbits and humans. Arizona, 1955. An advertisement offers a new home with a swimming pool for just under $10,000. This price highlights the dramatic inflation of the housing market compared to the affordable dreams of the 50s. USA 1945 shoppers browse the aisles of a grocery store during the post-war era. The shelves are stocked with canned goods and simple products, reflecting the consumer habits before the explosion of modern supermarket variety. SA 1981. Hi. School students gather in the hallway, showcasing the fashion of the early 80s, from feathered hair to denim jackets. The photo captures the quintessential look of American teenagers from that specific decade. Egypt, 1150 BC. Deeply carved hieroglyphics cover the walls of the Temple of Ramesses III. These ancient inscriptions at Medinet Habu have survived for 3 millennia, recording the history and religious beliefs of the pharaohs. Guatemala 500 at a 1,500-year-old ceramic Maya figurine features a removable helmet found in El Peru, Huaca. This delicate artifact showcases the playful creativity and skilled craftsmanship of the ancient Mayan civilization in Central America. USA 1983. A vintage Pizza Hut menu displays prices that seem incredibly low today. The familiar red logo and classic items evoke nostalgia for the days when the restaurant was a popular family dine-in destination. London, 1977. The cast of Star Wars poses out of costume during the filming of the first movie. Seeing the actors without their masks and makeup reveals the human faces behind the galaxy's most famous heroes. Niagara Falls, 1911. A massive mountain of ice forms at the base of the American Falls during a freezing winter. Tourists climb the slippery mound, exploring a frozen landscape that is rarely seen in modern times. Paris, 1960. Elegantly dressed women gather at a coffee shop in vibrant, stylish fashion. Photographer Jack Garofalo captured this colorful scene, showcasing the chic and sophisticated atmosphere of Parisian social life during the swinging 60s. Alaska, 1929. Kanowun, an Inuit woman, wears traditional jewelry on Nunivak Island. Her nose ring and beaded adornments represent the unique cultural heritage of her people preserved in this photograph before outside influences changed their lives. Washington, 1865. The top hat worn by Abraham Lincoln on the night he was shot sits on display. This personal item is a somber relic, witnessing one of the most tragic moments in American history. Baltic Sea, 1915. A cabin on a sunken steamship Aachen remains preserved underwater, hit by a torpedo during the First World War. The room sits silently on the seabed, a ghostly time capsule of maritime history. Sweden, 1958. A 17-year-old Pele walks the streets of Stockholm before the World Cup. The Brazilian teenager was about to dazzle the world with his skills, beginning his journey to become the greatest footballer ever. Los Angeles, 1987. The members of Guns N' Roses posed together during their rise to fame / Axl Rose, and the band embodied the gritty rock and roll excess that defined the music scene of the decade. New York, 1930. Waiters serve lunch to steelworkers on a beam high above the city while building the Waldorf Astoria. These men enjoyed fine dining in the sky, contrasting luxury service with dangerous construction work. Say 1949, an official boxing match takes place between a man and a muzzled bear. The bear won the fight, highlighting the bizarre and often cruel forms of entertainment that were once considered acceptable public spectacles. Egypt, 50 BC, the ceiling of the On Temple of Hathor in Dendera displays vibrant blue astronomical carvings, cleaned of centuries of soot. The 2,000-year-old colors shine brightly, revealing the ancient Egyptian understanding of the cosmos. Iraq present day, a comparison shows the Great Ziggurat of Ur before and after restoration. Built 4,000 years ago, this massive structure, dedicated to the moon, God has been reclaimed from the desert sands. New York, 1900. Two young boys are arrested by the police for pickpocketing on the street. These street urchins often turned to petty crime to survive the harsh conditions of the city tenements back then. USA 1941, Albert Einstein plays his beloved violin inside his home. The brilliant physicist found solace in music, often stating that he thought in terms of musical architecture when solving complex problems of the universe. St. Louis, 1936, people walk across the completely frozen Mississippi River during a severe winter. The ice was so thick that it formed a natural bridge, allowing residents to cross between states on foot. USA 1917, a wire cage known as a sleeping porch hangs out of a high window. These devices were used to give babies fresh air and sunshine, a terrifying concept by modern safety standards for children. Paris, 1980, the Citroën Carin concept car debuts with its futuristic pyramidal design designed by Trevor Fiore. The vehicle featured a unique three-seat layout with the driver in the middle, looking like a spaceship. Tinian, 1945, two scientists pose with the plutonium core of the Fat Man bomb. The photo was censored by the FBI to hide technical details of the weapon that would soon destroy Nagasaki and end we. Germany, 1945. 16-year-old soldier Hans-Georg Henke cries after being captured by American forces. His tears reflect the utter despair and shock of a teenager thrown into a losing war, his world collapsing around him completely. Brussels, 1989. A satirical poster celebrates NATO by making fun of its member states. The humorous artwork plays on national stereotypes, showing a lighter side to the military alliance near the end of the Cold War. Siberia, 1950s author Alexander Solzhenitsyn is pictured as a prisoner in the Soviet Gulag system. His brutal experiences in these forced labor camps would inspire his Nobel Prize-winning literature, exposing the horrors of the Stalinist regime. Hong Kong, 1950, a street scene captured by photographer Fan Ho plays with light and shadow. The image documents the daily life of the city during a period of rapid transition and post-war reconstruction. Algeria 100 and the ruins of Timgad reveal the perfect grid plan of a Roman city founded by Emperor Trajan. The layout remains visible today, a testament to the precise urban planning used by the empire. New York, 1980, John Lennon signs an autograph for Mark David Chapman outside his apartment. This chilling photograph captures the music legend with the man who would tragically murder him just 5 hours later that same night. Mexico, 1500s. The massive Aztec sunstone depicts the 5 worlds of the sun from mythology. This intricate calendar stone is a masterpiece of sculpture representing the complex cosmological beliefs of the Aztec civilization. New York, 1957, Marilyn Monroe poses for a camera radiating her signature glamour. Even at the height of her fame, the actress faced intense public scrutiny, yet remains an enduring icon of beauty in Hollywood history. Egypt, 1856. A man stands on the lap of a colossal statue of Ramesses the Great. The scale of the figure emphasizes the monumental size of ancient Egyptian art compared to the tiny human visitor. Toronto, 2018. A comparison shows the Gooderham Building in 1898, and today the red brick Flatiron structure has survived while the city grew up around it, maintaining its historic charm amidst a modern skyline of glass. Washington, 1975, President Gerald Ford juggles a soccer ball with Pelé in the White House Rose Garden. The Brazilian legend was, in America, to promote the sport, bringing soccer to the forefront of U.S. culture. Beijing, 1972, President Richard Nixon dines with Chinese leaders using chopsticks. This historic visit opened diplomatic relations between the two nations, ending decades of silence and reshaping the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War. Indiana, 1950s rows of cars fill a drive-in theater in South Bend as the sun sets. This classic American pastime allowed families and couples to watch movies from the privacy of their vehicles under the stars. New York, 1955. James Dean walks alone through the rain. In Times Square, the moody photograph captures the essence of the rebel icon just months before his tragic death in a car crash would immortalize him. USA 1956, a hospital patient smiles as ducklings are used for medical therapy. The presence of the small animals brought joy and comfort to children undergoing treatment, proving the healing power of nature and animals. Arkansas 2012. 4-year-old Madeline Grace Wallace carries flags at the National Cemetery she visited with her mother to honor the fallen on Memorial Day, learning the importance of remembrance and sacrifice at a very young age. Egypt present day, the Colossi of Memnon stand as the only remains of the temple of King Amenhotep III. These massive stone statues have guarded the Theban necropolis for thousands of years, outlasting the temple itself. Saudi Arabia present day, an Ottoman supply train lies rusting in the desert where it was ambushed by Lawrence of Arabia. Over a century later, the wreckage remains a silent witness to the guerrilla warfare. Germany 1898. Johann Schmidt displays his incredibly detailed plaster model of the moon. It took him 4 years to assemble the 116 sections, creating a scientific masterpiece long before space travel was possible. USA 1943. A young boy uses his family's war ration book to buy vegetable juice during World War II. Citizens made daily sacrifices on the home front, carefully managing coupons to purchase basic food supplies. London 1962. Author Ian Fleming poses with a pistol, channeling the spirit of his creation, James Bond. He wrote the spy novels based on his own intelligence experience, creating a cultural phenomenon that defines spy fiction. New York 1909. Wilbur Wright flies his airplane around the Statue of Liberty during a city celebration. This daring flight demonstrated the reliability of early aviation, thrilling the crowds who watched the machine circle the copper statue. USA 1897, Ralph Willett Dixie of the Bannock tribe and Peter Jim of the Shoshone tribe pose for a portrait. Their traditional attire preserves the visual history of their cultures during a time of immense change. Tennessee 1925, high school teacher John Scopes stands trial for teaching the theory of evolution. The case, known as the Scopes Monkey Trial, sparked a national debate about science, religion, and the law in American classrooms. Turkey 2000s. The Mar Gypsy Girl mosaic stares intensely from the ruins of Zeugma recovered from floodwaters. This Roman masterpiece is celebrated for its haunting eyes, which seem to follow the viewer, showcasing the artistic mastery of the ancient world. Tinian 1945 physicist Harold Agnew smiles while holding the plutonium core of the Fat Man bomb. The casual way he carries the heart of the weapon that would destroy Nagasaki creates a chilling contrast between human scientific achievement and mass destruction. India 1958, a young Farrokh Bulsara poses with a trophy at his boarding school before reinventing himself as Freddie Mercury. The future rock god was a shy, buck-toothed student in Bombay, honing the musical talent that would eventually conquer the world. San Francisco 1935. A lone worker balances on the initial catwalk cables of the Golden Gate Bridge high above the bay. This image captures the terrifying heights and isolation faced by the ironworkers who stitched the two sides of the strait together. New York City 1935. African-American men line up to volunteer for the Ethiopian military against Italian invasion. This show of solidarity demonstrates the Pan-African connection as Black Americans rally to defend the only independent African nation from colonial aggression. Rome 1944. An Italian woman curiously lifts the kilt of a Scottish soldier near the Colosseum. This humorous, cheeky moment during the liberation of Rome highlights the culture clash and friendly curiosity between the locals and the distinctive Allied troops. Portland 1938. The massive forestry building built of whole Log stands like a wooden cathedral as the world's largest log cabin. It celebrated the timber industry's might before tragically burning to the ground in a spectacular fire decades later. Oklahoma 1890 Quanah Parker, the last chief of the Comanches, stands in traditional dress. His stoic presence bridges two worlds, representing a leader who fought fiercely for his people's freedom before guiding them through the painful transition to reservation life. United States, 1920s, a group of teenagers poses in suits and flapper-style dresses. Their sophisticated attire for a high school dance reflects the maturity expected of youth in the jazz age. A stark contrast to the casual culture of later generations. New York City, 1919. A massive pyramid made of thousands of captured German helmets rises. Outside Grand Central Terminal, this towering display of war trophies visually represented the scale of the Allied victory and the sheer number of enemy soldiers defeated. Los Angeles, 1960s. Two burly LAPD officers stand awkwardly in dresses and wigs. This undercover operation to catch purse snatchers highlights the unorthodox, sometimes comical methods used by police departments before modern surveillance technology took over. France, 1918, Captain Harry S. Truman poses in his World War I uniform. The round spectacles are the only hint of the future president whose leadership style was forged in the artillery barrages of the Western Front long before he entered the White House. Russia, 1930s. A rare color autochrome reveals the golden splendor of the Amber Room. This eighth wonder of the world glows with warmth, preserving a memory of the masterpiece before it was looted by Nazis and lost to history forever. Canada, 1969. A dry cliff face replaces the roaring Niagara Falls. Engineers temporarily diverted the river to study erosion, revealing the rocky skeleton of the landmark and offering a once-in-a-lifetime view of the falls, silenced by human intervention. California, 1978. Florence Thompson. The face of the Great Depression smiles in her later years, decades after the iconic migrant mother photo defined a generation of poverty. This image shows the resilience of the woman who survived the Dust Bowl to see her grandchildren grow. France, 1918. Allied soldiers advance through a shattered landscape near the war's end. The date marks the beginning of the 100 Days Offensive, the final push that would break the German lines and ultimately bring the Great War to a close. Saigon, 1975, a helicopter lifts off from a rooftop as desperate crowds gather below this frantic evacuation. During the fall of Saigon marks the chaotic, humiliating end of the Vietnam War, symbolizing the collapse of American efforts in the region. Hollywood 2000, Lucy Liu, Cameron Diaz, and Drew Barrymore pose together for Charlie's Angels. This trio redefined the female action hero for the new millennium, blending campy fun with martial arts in a blockbuster that celebrated the power of female friendship. United States, 1977. A Sears catalog spread showcases a wood-paneled family room with plaid furniture. This aesthetic defined the American suburban home of the 70s. A cozy brown-tinted vision of domestic comfort that has since become the ultimate symbol of retro kitsch. United States current era forensic artist Lois Gibson holds a sketch next to a photo of a captured criminal. Her incredibly accurate drawings have led to over 1,000 arrests, proving that even in the digital age, human artistic intuition is a powerful tool for justice. Hollywood 1980s, a young Demi Moore poses with teased hair and 80s fashion before becoming the highest-paid actress in the world. She was a rising star of the Brat Pack, representing the new edgy generation taking over the film industry. New York City 1943. Italian-American children huddle around a small fire on a street corner. This candid street scene captures the community atmosphere of the Lower East Side, where the sidewalk served as a living room for immigrant families during the war years. Hollywood, 1948, Lauren Bacall rests her head on Humphrey Bogart's shoulder on the set of Key Largo. The chemistry between Bogey and Bacall sizzles, even in stillness, immortalizing one of cinema's greatest romances, both on and off the screen. Hollywood, 1942, Joan Crawford knits intently while listening to director Curtis Bernhardt. The contrast between her glamorous movie star appearance and the domestic hobby reveals the disciplined patience required during the long, tedious waits between takes on a film set. New York City, 1980, John F. Kennedy Jr. walks through the crowd after Elton John's massive Central Park concert. The son of the slain president moves among the people, a young American prince blending into the cultural fabric of the city he loved. United States, 1885, Sitting Bull and Buffalo. Bill Cody stand together in a studio portrait. The Lakota chief and the showman formed an unlikely partnership in the Wild West show, blurring the lines between the reality of the frontier wars and their theatrical reenactment. California, 1941. Bette Davis sits in the Death Valley sand, wearing a fur-trimmed coat, taking a break from filming. The legendary actress maintains her intense composure despite the heat, embodying the professionalism that made her a force of nature in Hollywood. London, 1940, a smiling bride steps out of a house with blown-out windows and rubble. Her determination to proceed with her wedding despite the Blitz bombings symbolizes the British keep calm and carry on, spirit refusing to let war destroy lives. Joyful milestones. Florida, 1967. High on a utility pole, a lineman gives mouth-to-mouth resuscitation to his unconscious colleague. This dramatic Pulitzer Prize-winning photo captures a desperate battle for life in the air, immortalizing the brotherhood and danger of the line worker profession. London, 1980's Princess Diana laughs naturally in a candid, unguarded moment away from the formal poses of royalty. This snapshot reveals the genuine charisma and human warmth that earned her the title the People's Princess and endeared her to the world. New York City, 1936. Franklin D. Roosevelt speaks at the Statue of Liberty's 50th anniversary, overcoming his disability to stand at the podium. The president reaffirmed the nation's commitment to freedom and democracy as the shadow of fascism began to lengthen across Europe. Kentucky, 1936. A tiny one-room shack sits isolated in the forest. This image of rural poverty illustrates the primitive living conditions in parts of Appalachia during the Depression, where families survived with little more than a roof over their heads. Los Angeles, 1969. Travelers at a bus terminal stare into small coin-operated television chairs. This glimpse of futuristic paid entertainment shows how the demand for constant media consumption was already shaping public spaces long before the smartphone era. Bahamas, 1965. Sean Connery and Claudine Auger relax on a beach during the filming of Thunderball. The pair epitomized the cool, exotic aesthetic of the James Bond franchise, which turned international espionage into a fantasy of sun sand and glamour. Philippines, 1991, a truck flees a colossal cloud of ash rolling down the valley from Mount Pinatubo. The overwhelming scale of the pyroclastic flow dwarfs the vehicle, capturing the terrifying power of the second largest volcanic eruption of the 20th century. Oregon, 1890's Linus, a horse with a double mane reaching 14 feet, stands on display. This genetic marvel became a sensation, representing the era's fascination with biological oddities and the showmanship involved in exhibiting wonders of nature to the public. California, 1890's loggers pose proudly next to the fallen trunk of a massive ancient sequoia. The image is a melancholic record of the era's resource extraction, where a tree that had stood for 2 millennia was felled for lumber and bragging rights. Hollywood 1970s Bernadette Peters and Steve Martin pose together with curly hair and 70s style. The couple, both comedy icons, share a warm moment reflecting the creative energy and distinctive fashion of the entertainment world during the decade. The expansive sky of the American West frames three Piegan chiefs in this 1900 photograph by Edward Curtis. It is a melancholic tribute to a way of life that was rapidly disappearing, captured by a photographer, are dedicated to preserving their legacy.